Today, I wanted to share with you a model that if you've coached with me for a long time, meaning it's been 4, 5, 6+ years, you've probably seen this before. And yet, because of where we are in the market, because of where we are in history, I felt like this was something that we should come back to, that we should have a refresher on this model. Now, I did not create it. I actually ripped it off from Tony Robbins, and specifically, I ripped it off from the video that I'm about to show you. So today you're going to be hearing directly from him via a YouTube video, and we will share this video if you want. It's 38 minutes long, and yet I'm only going to show you like a 3 to 4 minute clip. So don't worry, we're not going to be here for 40 minutes. If you're wondering, it's him and then two other gentlemen that you'll see in the shot. Those two guys are digital marketers. One of them's name's John Reese. The other one is Frank Kern. It's not really relevant to what we're going to be sharing with you here, but I'm going to turn this over to that, and then we're going to have a discussion. So write your ahas down. Write down the things that stuck out to you in this short clip, and then come back prepared to discuss this with everyone, okay? So I'm going to share my screen and hit play.
Plan of maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. That's the piece that kills people, right? So if it's a must for you, you got to make it work, right? In our case, right? It's an example. If it's not a must for you and you're not sure, you don't know what to do. So years ago, I'd look around and say, okay, how do people get themselves to follow through that haven't been following through? What's the difference? And I started interviewing hundreds of people, literally, and eventually thousands, because I had thousands of my events. So I'd ask the group to give me their feedback. And I came up with this model. It's like the holy grail of belief, or the holy grail of momentum. It's like the difference between what makes the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, right? And the difference we all know is mindset, but like, how's that built? So this is what I did. I created these stupid little 4 little boxes, and I'll scribble it here for you. You think about the first thing that determines whether you can do something or not, and I put that in this first box at the top here on the left side. It's potential. Like, what's the potential of a human being? Like, when you guys started, you proved something no one had done in history. You ran the 4-minute mile, right? For golly knows how many centuries, they're trying to run a 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister does it. How did he do it? Do you remember? You did it in this industry, right? You made $1 million in a day. No one had ever done that in history, right? After you did it, a bunch of other guys are doing it in case it became possible. Roger Bannister didn't just go physically practice. He made a shift in his head. He practiced in his head because he could never achieve it physically. So he had to change in his head first so that the result became certain enough. He believed it, and then his body got him through. After Roger Bannister ran that 4-minute mile, within 2 years, 37 people ran a 4-minute mile. Wow. When no one in history had ever done it. Now, here's how it works. The potential for anybody getting your product is extraordinary. They can do what you've done as much, more or less. They can do whatever they want to do. The potential's there. The market's proven that. Whether or not they tap into that potential has a lot to do with what action they take, which is the question you came to me with, right? Like, God, they all have potential, but they're not taking action. And we all know that the action they take is going to determine the results they get. That's pretty obvious. So most people have a belief about what their real potential is no matter what you tell them. And that affects how much action they take. And of course, that affects the result. And then ironically, that result reinforces their belief. And then that belief affects it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a person has unlimited potential, we all agree. But they take little action, little results. Why? Because they have to start with a problem with their belief. They don't believe it's really going to happen for me. Maybe for Frank Kearns because he's got the cool hair and stuff, or maybe it's for you because you're so driven, but it's not me. Maybe Tony Robbins because he's a freak, got these big teeth. Whatever their thought process is, right? They got this thing, right? But what happens is if you believe that there's very little potential, how much action are you going to take? Nothing, little. And when you take little potential with a little action, what kind of results do you get? Lousy little results. And when you get little results, what does that do to your belief? You go, see, I told you this was a waste of time, told you this wouldn't work. And then what happens? You tap even less potential, you take even less action, you get even worse results, and your belief gets even weaker. And this sucker feeds on itself until you are in a downward spiral.
It's poisonous.
It's poisonous and it's self-fulfilling. Now, what if something could happen that could come along and fill you with a sense of absolute certainty? Not like I believe, but where you know. In you guys' case, mine as well, we knew because we had to. Because we burned the boats. There was no other option. We had to find a way. We weren't going to live that way. We all did it in different ways and for different reasons, but in essence, that was it. If you get yourself in a state of certainty that this is going to work. I'm going to find the way. And if this doesn't work, I will make the way. Then you tap a lot more potential. And when you're certain in your potential, you take massive action. When you take massive action, you really believe in something, you get great results. When you get great results, your brain goes, see, I told you I was a stud. I told you this thing would work out. Now you're even stronger. You tap more potential, take greater action, greater results. That's how you went from $300 in a week to 2,500 in 5 days to 100,000 in a month to $1 million in a day. Same thing with you. And we get momentum. That's why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Now, some people go out and they go, well, I'm going to take a bunch of action. All right, I'm going to open this product. I'm going to try it. And they'll say to you, I even did it. But it's like a salesman who goes and knocks on the door, and he knocks on 100 doors and says,
you don't want one of these, do you?
yeah, exactly right. You know? And even if he doesn't say it verbally, his face says it because he doesn't believe it's going to work. So his voice, his body, the execution is so weak. Maybe if he talks to 100 people, somebody's going to buy out of pity. He's going to want his kids to starve, right? But he's not going to get the result. So the core difference in people is, how do you produce certainty when the world isn't giving it to you? You go out and you try. In your case, you're 100,000 in debt and nothing's working. How do you keep yourself going? The way you did it, the way I did it, the way you're doing it, we may not have done it consciously, is we didn't change our potential. That was there. And it wasn't even taking more action. Taking more action with a belief it's not going to work, it's not going to change anything. We got results in our head that made us feel certain as if it had already happened. True or false for you?
True.
All right. So give me an example so people.
Okay. So I know that that's a lot in a little bit of time there, right? And yet you saw the model. And if you need me to, I'm happy to kind of draw this out. In fact, I'll show you here in a second the way that I kind of reiterated this. And mostly I did it for Brittany Winnery because she likes acronyms and she likes things to start with the first letter. And yet I wanted to start or come back with the model that he explained, which is potential. And potential is going to create action. Action is going to create results. And then there's belief, and belief is going to support your potential. So that's the model, right? And so I don't typically do this, but today I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion with you. And first, what was it about what he said that stood out to you? What did you write down? Just raise your hand, take yourself off mute, whatever you want to do.
I think it's
basically by changing your thoughts or your mindset will change your results and not even necessarily have to take more action.
Yeah. So at its core, John, the thing that he's really talking about is, how do we cultivate a level of certainty that the result that we intend to create has already been created? See, one of the things that I have been like kicking around, and a question I asked somebody last week, that you ever just ask a question and it just like lands? Because this question lastly just landed right when I needed it to. And I said, you know, when I listen to you talk about your goals and the things that you want to achieve, you do it from the energy of longing. You don't do it from the energy of knowing. So tell me about a time that you achieved something from the energy of knowing it's already there. I will make it happen, versus longing, which is, oh my gosh, that would be really great, or I hope it happens. So you're absolutely right, John. Who else? There was somebody else that spoke up.
It was just, I mean, I guess as you planned, a good reminder that like using the state meter and relying on our creed to get into that belief of like that mindset of certainty that we are able, or I guess the belief of certainty that what we want to achieve is possible.
That's right. And see, that's it, Meg, because you're always acting, you're always behaving from your level of certainty. Like for most of you, if you drove to your office today, you didn't feel uncertain that you were going to get there. In fact, you felt very, very certain that you were going to get from your house to your office. And so your level of action is always baked in what you feel is certain. And so if you are certain, and this is one of the things that I used to use it all the time with people, because I would give them an idea or we would talk about a process that I know delivers results. And if they said something like, okay, well, we'll try it, or okay, well, we'll see what happens, I knew right then, okay, great. Based on that level of belief, how much potential are they tapping into? When they're saying, we'll see, yeah, we'll give it a try. Well, even if you have the best play in the world, the best like tactic in the world, but you're not doing it from a place of like absolute level 10 certainty, then the play doesn't work. Does that make sense? And so one thing that I've always shared with people as it relates to this model is that the majority of the time, you are going to get what you started with. You're going to receive what you thought you would get in your mind. So before I show you my reiteration of this and just a few more points around this model, is there anybody else that said something or wrote something down that you want to share?
I'll share, Jordan. I heard when he first started with potential, he said you're going to practice in your mind, and then results was that you got results in your mind, and then of course that feeds to your beliefs. And after how many years of you suggesting it, did I finally start listening to Psycho-Cybernetics this weekend? And what I grabbed from that was nothing succeeds like success, and sometimes that success just first needs to be in our mind. Like when I ran a marathon, not really being a runner, I was visualizing that I completed the marathon and that I didn't die. So that was great. And I did. So like you said, I came from an energy of knowing that I can, and that's my potential, because my potential is limitless.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Now, Meg, you popped a question here in the chat box. Take yourself off mute and ask that question.
So what I struggle with is I feel like I'm an all or nothing person, and I can like get into modes where I'm super motivated and can sustain it for a couple weeks or a couple months. And I can be super certain maybe for an hour or a week or a month or whatever, and then it's fleeting. So I guess my question is, how do you maintain it? And maybe that's the creed.
So then let's say that we weren't having a conversation about mental hygiene. We weren't having a conversation about mental performance or conditioning. Let's say that you were essentially using the area of fitness as the context of this question. So if you said to me, yeah, Jordan, I get in shape like 2 to 3 months at a time, and then I kind of fall off, right?
Like you've never met me.
What'd you say?
It's like you've seen me do this a time or two.
Well, I'm not using that metaphor directly at you, but do you understand that, and I was sharing this with somebody on Friday because I feel like this conversation around mental health and mental wellness is important, but what people need to understand, and when I talk about mental health, mental wellness, I mean mental performance too. I don't mean just sitting around singing Kumbaya, that you are able to take things out of your head and make it real. And so I was talking to her and she's like, my mental health is so important to me, my mental wellness. And I was like, okay, that's great. But understand something, that those are byproducts of mental hygiene. And mental hygiene is just like physical hygiene, right? Like your teeth, for example, you have to brush those things twice a day. You need to floss. You need to do the things that your dentist tells you to do in order to maintain good physical hygiene. And so, Meg, when we're talking about being physically fit and strong, being mentally fit and strong, what that boils down to is your level of commitment to mental hygiene. And so it's noticing what are the things that ultimately contribute to me feeling like I have this level 10 certainty, that I have this deep sense of motivation, because you did not catch those things. You didn't catch certainty. It's not COVID. You produced it. And then what you're saying is that you lost it along the way, which is perfectly cool. I think that most people do that. And yet what's most important is, do you, one, notice when it's starting to wane? Because most things happen in a process that we title as gradual and then sudden, right? The real estate market is a great example. It gradually starts shifting, and then all of a sudden it shifts. But there were these little bitty markers at the beginning that indicated that the market was beginning to change. More showings, longer days on market. There are these very, very lead indicators. The challenge with people as it relates to their own mental hygiene and their own mental performance over time is that you're not aware of the lead indicators that are taking you off course. And so I constantly am sharing with people, like, if you think about what are those 2 to 3 patterns, those 2 to 3 thoughts that start to derail you, that start to diminish your level of certainty, it's no different than if I'm outside, and I think my friends from Oklahoma and Kansas would agree with me on this. If it's May to September and we're outside and it's hot and sunny, then it gets like cool and cloudy and it starts to rain. And then the clouds go away, but the rain keeps going. You know what that is? Like, sure as shit, that's a tornado. If those 3 to 4 things happen in a row, anybody from Kansas or Oklahoma will tell you that's not a watch, that's not a warning. There's probably one on the ground within a 10-mile radius of you. And so we know this because we've lived through this shit. And the thing is about you and what you're gaining and losing is that you have to have so much clarity on the beginning stages of what are the 2 to 3 things that happen that should then signal the siren, because that's what happens in cities like where I live. We have sirens that go off in the city that let everyone know. And that should be, Meg, your opportunity to say, okay, I'm getting off track. Now I got to go back and I've got to start to practice what it is that I stopped doing. In fact, that's one of my all-time favorite questions. What is it that you were doing that has made you successful that you have since stopped? And it's typically these little bitty things that we think are so insignificant, but compounded over time, they are the difference that makes the difference. But does that answer your question, the way that I just posed that?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this already over the weekend. I'm coming up with like a personal scorecard, and because I know the lead indicator for me is working out. So it's going to be super simple, like 10 points for working out every day, and then 5 points for each of my 3 priorities. So
I love that. And that's where we're going to go in January with my Freed Life. There's this whole concept, and I would encourage you all to look it up. I learned about it from a guy named Ben Greenfield, and it's called self-quantification. Self-quantification. How do you keep score on the behaviors that ultimately lead to what it is that you would call a life by design, your ideal life, whatever you want to call it, right? So I love that, Meg. The self-quantification is ultimately where you're headed. Now, real quick, just for Brittany Winery, this is just for Brittany. Here's my reiteration of this model. So notice that they all start with the letter P. I know it's not an acronym, Brittany, but this is as good as I can get it. So when we talk about potential, we left that the same. Potential is going to lead to your level of performance. Your level of performance is going to get you a payoff. And the payoff is it what you wanted or what you didn't want, right? And then that's ultimately going to influence your level of possibility. But the thing I want you to understand is that you and the relationship that you have to what is possible for you is always at play. You are always behaving in accordance with what you believe is possible. And Gary outlines this. In fact, I believe this is on page 81 in the MREA, but I love this quote. He shared it on Facebook a few years ago. If I've learned anything in life, it's that if you believe something is possible, you tend to focus on the constructive means necessary to make that possibility a reality. I've also learned to believe the opposite. If you don't think something is possible, you will be blinded to the ways it could be done. It's a self-imposed blind spot. So your relationship to possibility is what we're talking about when we get into this idea of beliefs and certainty. So if you want to go out and win, you got to win in your mind first, because each and every one of you were born with a 3D printer. You are constantly printing the conversation that is happening internally, externally. Your current world is just a reflection of the ways that you have thought, felt, and acted over a period of time. So using that model, using what he shared with you, you can create whatever it is that you want. But remember, you're going to get what you started with. So start with level 10 certainty. So I trust this is helpful. I know this is a little bit longer than maybe some of the lessons that we've had in the past. We will share with you the video. So we'll make sure that we put that in the Facebook group so that each and every one of you have it. And I would encourage you, it's a great video. You could go watch the whole thing. I'm also going to share in there a video from a guy named Alex Hanold. Alex Hanold is the top free solo rock climber in the world. And it's a 10-minute TED Talk. And he talks about how he cultivates a mindset of certainty. And this dude is climbing some of the biggest rock faces in the world with no equipment. So if he falls, he's dead. So he's got to cultivate a level of certainty that most of us only dream about. So both of those things will be in the Facebook group. Thank you all for being here today. Go out and practice level 10 certainty, and we will see you back in 2 weeks. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.